BBK Productions presents Spice Up Your Morning with the Spice Sisters.
My name's Basil.
I'm Pepper.
And I'm Cayenne.
And we're the Spice Sisters coming at you live with a saucy recap of the Korean War. So let's begin before the start of the war at the Potsdam Conference, where the Big Three discussed Korea's fate. They decided to divide Korea into two different countries, North and South Korea. Pictured here is the Big Three: Clement Attlee, Harry Truman, and Joseph Stalin at the Potsdam Conference.
The 38th parallel would be the dividing line between the countries. North Korea was for the communists, and South Korea was for all others. Here is a picture of the sign posted at the 38th parallel in Korea.
Before the fighting began, nationalist leader Jiang Jieshi had been fighting the Civil War against communists led by Mao Zedong. The United States supported Jiang, while the Soviet Union supported Mao. On the left is Jiang Jieshi, and on the right is Mao Zedong.
When the Japanese surrendered during World War II, they gave the part of Korea below the 38th parallel to the United States. So the United States appointed Lieutenant General John Hodge as military governor of South Korea and head of the USAMGIK, which is the United States Army military government in Korea. Pictured here is General John Hodge.
Let's fast forward to 1947. President Harry Truman vowed to help any country under the threat of communism. This is known as the Truman Doctrine. Pictured here is President Truman presenting the Truman Doctrine.
Around 1948, Mao's forces dominated the Civil War in China. Jiang was forced to flee to Taiwan, and the communists took over China, and Mao established the People's Republic of China.
On June 25, 1950, North Korean forces attacked South Korea, crossing the 38th parallel with little resistance. This is the true start of the Korean War. Within a few days, the forces took control of the capital city of Seoul.
On June 27th, the United Nations Security Council passed the Resolution 83 calling all members of the United Nations to lend military aid to South Korea. The Soviet Union was boycotting the council meetings because the UN refused to see Mao's People's Republic of China. Because of this, they were not present and could not veto the decision. Displayed here is the United Nations Security Council discussing the Korean War. On July 4th, 1950, the Americans battled with the North Korean soldiers at the Battle of Osan, causing more than 150 Americans to be injured or killed.
Truman knew that the policy of appeasement did not work in the past with Germany, so he announced that the United States would invade South Korea. He sent troops, led by Douglas MacArthur, who were stationed in Japan, to South Korea without a formal declaration of war from Congress.
However, the forces did not have the proper training or equipment, so they were forced to retreat to the peninsula near Pusan. Here the other United Nations forces met up with them, so they established a defensive perimeter known as the Battle of Pusan Perimeter. On July 27th, MacArthur met with Commander Walton Walker. MacArthur told him there will be no Dunkirk in this command. To retire to Pusan will be unacceptable. Over the next 6 weeks, the American and South Koreans struggled to desperately prevent the North Koreans from gaining complete control over Korea. Behind me is the path of retreat for the forces that fled to Pusan.
MacArthur came up with a plan to drive the North Korean forces from South Korea. He decided to strike at their weakness, which was their limited supply lines, by launching a surprise attack on the port of Incheon, which was behind the enemy lines. When they launched their attack on September 15, 1950, it caused the communist forces to flee to the North Korea border. By October, they were north of the 38th parallel. Pictured here are troops invading Incheon.
Since North Korea shares a border with China, Truman was worried about what China would do if they invaded North Korea. A Chinese leader had warned them not to invade, but MacArthur did not take this warning seriously. At a meeting with President Truman at Wake Island, General MacArthur assures him that China would not intervene. Therefore, the United States pushes a resolution through the UN calling for a unified, independent, and democratic Korea.
Contrary to MacArthur's assumption, when he attacked above the 38th parallel and reached the Chinese border at Yalu River, Chinese soldiers attacked South Korean and U.S. positions on November 25, 1950. This forces the UN troops back. Now that China has become involved, it has become a major land war. The war could not be won without many troops or atomic weapons.
Because of China's involvement in the war, Truman wanted a policy of limited war, which is a war fought to achieve specific goals. Being a soldier, MacArthur distrusted Truman's policy and wanted complete victory in the war. MacArthur sent a letter to the House Republican leader attacking Truman's policy of limited war, which eventually led to the firing of MacArthur on April 11, 1951. Pictured here is MacArthur and Truman.
From the spring of 1951 until 1953, there were multiple battles fought between the two sides. One of these battles took place on January 4, 1951, when China's People Volunteer Army and the Korean People Army of North Korea retake Seoul again.
Another battle was from February 20th to March 15th, 1951, where the UN forces led an offensive known as Operation Killer, which was against the People's Volunteer Army of China and the North Korean Army.
The APA and the Chinese initiated the Spring Offensive, which was fought as two battles, the Battle of Imjin River and the Battle of Kapyong. The Second Spring Offensive by the Chinese, the 2nd, 3rd, and 25th Infantry Division of the U.S. Army was sent, while the Marines used the 1st Division.
On September 13, 1951, the Battle of Heartbreak Ridge was fought between the South Korean, French, American, and Philippine forces, and the Chinese and North Korean forces. Combined, there were over 28,000 casualties from this battle.
On October 6, 1952, the Battle of Whitehorse was fought, causing the Chinese to gain more of an advantage over American, French, and South Korean forces.
In the Battle of Triangle Hill on October 14th, the Americans attempted to gain control of a strategic location called the Iron Triangle, which was controlled by the Communists at the time. However, the Americans had to call a further offensive and the Chinese kept the position. Pictured here is the Iron Triangle.
From October 6th to October 12th, the Battle of Whitehorse Hill was fought. The battle was a fight to control a 2-mile-long bridge in the Yokochon Valley in North Korean territory that UN forces controlled. The battle began with a communist attack, and then for the next week, the two sides battled to try and control the ridge. In the end, the UN forces were able to regain the ridge and end the battle.
In the Battle of Triangle Hill from October 14th to November 28, 1952, where the Americans attempted to gain control of a strategic location called the Iron Triangle, which was controlled by the Communists at the time. The U.S. aircrafts dropped intense bombing on the area, making the attack appear successful at first. However, the Chinese had built tunnels that allowed them to counterattack the Americans, forcing the American forces to fall back.
Then on October 29th, a South Korean infantry launched another attack on Triangle Hill. They were successful at first, but then the Chinese heavy caliber bombing forced the South Korean forces to retreat. The Battle of Triangle Hill continued on with battles like this until American commander General James Von Fleet decided to call off any more attacks. At the end of this long battle, China kept possession of Triangle Hill. Pictured here is the Iron Triangle.
From March to July of 1953, the Battle of Pork Chop Hill took place. It has become a very controversial battle in the Korean War because it was the longest lasting at about 3.5 months, with thousands of men on both sides either wounded or killed.
As you just heard, many of these battles took a very long time because it was a constant toss between which side would take control. Many times, the battle did not result in a change of control, and this prevented each side from gaining on their opponent, causing a stalemate to occur.
During the election of 1952, candidate Dwight D. Eisenhower ran based on the idea that he could end the war. He was elected and went to Korea to figure out the best plan to end the war. He was convinced strong action such as nuclear warfare would be the only way to end the war. However, the possibility of nuclear warfare weapons being used along with the recent death of Stalin caused communists to end the war. Here is a picture of Dwight D. Eisenhower getting sworn in as president.
Even though no country actually won the war, China was the only country that benefited from it. The war boosted China's reputation because they stood up to the United Nations, showing they could compete with very powerful nations. Here is the flag of the People's Republic of China. The red color in the flag represents the revolutionary communist philosophy that dominated China when Mao Zedong took control.
The Korean War impacted the United States in many ways. When President Truman sent troops into battle without a formal declaration of war, this set an example for presidents to follow in the future. It also increased military spending for many years to come in the United States. It also caused the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, also known as SEATO, a defensive alliance aimed at preventing the spread of communism from growing in Southeast Asia. The countries involved in this alliance were Pakistan, Thailand, Philippines, Australia, New Zealand, France, Britain, and the United States. Displayed behind me is the SEATO emblem.
The Koreas remain divided by the 38th parallel to this day. Here is a map of the Koreas after the war.
Here's a devastating overview of the casualties of the Korean War. 178,426 North Korean soldiers died, and 367,283,282 South Korean alliance soldiers died, and an estimated 2.5 million civilians died as well.
We hope you enjoyed this spicy recap of the Korean War.
That's all for today's show. I'm Basil.
I'm Pepper.
And I'm Cayenne.
We'll see you next time. Spice Sisters out!